everybody. Good morning. Welcome to GopherCon Israel 2023. Thank you for the introduction, Miki. It is a huge pleasure for me to be here and a great honor to be keynoting this conference. When Miki reached out to me not too long ago, it was pretty much an immediate yes to take this opportunity and come speak with everybody. So I'm really excited. I really appreciate it. And I just want to say everything is like coming together really good. The conference looks great. So thanks everybody for being here. And I want to start by let's give a round of applause for Miki and all of the rest of the organizers for making this happen. So as Miki mentioned, my name is Derek Parker. I am the creator of the Delve Debugger. And this particular talk I'm really excited about, but it's a bit of it's a bit different from the types of talks that I generally give. So typically I give like really technical talks and usually about Delve or some sort of low-level thing having to do directly with Go in a technical sense. But for this talk, I kind of want to focus a little bit more on the community, Go kind of overall as a language, and kind of how I feel about Go and how I think Go, why I think Go is so popular and so powerful of a language, and kind of how it enables so many people to build so many great things. So the title of this talk is Go, the Language of Dreamers. So naturally, I think that brings up a big question of what constitutes a dreamer. So the word dreamer is kind of a tricky one because it can have a few different meanings, and some of the meanings can have somewhat of a negative connotation, right? When you think of a dreamer, you might think of somebody who is kind of like lost in the clouds a little bit, not maybe kind of not actually like executing on things or whatever, just kind of lost in their own thoughts, right? Daydreaming, that kind of thing. But let's take a look at the actual definition. So dreamer is actually defined as one who lives in a world of fancy and imagination, right? Fancy and imagination. Now, in particular, I think the last word of this definition to me is the most important. This idea of imagination. So when I think of dreamers in this specific context, in the context that I'm speaking to all of you about, I think of people who think big, and people who are willing to dream up and explore new ideas. So to me, what I would say personally is that I think dreamers are kind of more like visionaries. People who see a big lofty goal, something like shooting for the moon, right? And actually try to make it there. So visionaries in my mind are more ambitious, motivated, and folks who tend to kind of think outside of the box a little bit. So let's step back a little bit, just like we did with the word dreamers, and think about what is a visionary? What does it mean to be a visionary in this context? So if we look again at the definition, it is having or marked by foresight and imagination. So just as I did with the first definition, I want to focus a little bit on the last three words, foresight and imagination. And if you'll remember, the first definition ended with that same word, imagination. Now, to me, foresight represents the ability to see things that haven't yet come to be realized yet. So the ability to kind of look into the future and imagine or predict new trends, new technologies, new ways of solving problems. And I think that goes hand in hand with imagination, because if you don't have the imagination, if you don't have the ability to kind of think outside of the box and visualize these things in the first place, you'll never be able to create and kind of execute them. And I think when you combine both of those concepts, and you combine that with all of the Gophers that we have here in this room and in the world, you get, when you combine a dreamer and a visionary, you get essentially this, right? We all have the opportunity to be a gopher metaphorically riding on a fire-breathing unicorn through space. Essentially, we have unlimited potential. I believe that the reason why we're all in this room together, the reason why gophers all around the world come to conferences, give these talks, listen to these talks and things like that is because everybody has their own set of ambitions, things they want to do, create, build, accomplish, and achieve. And the purpose of this particular talk is, as it relates to Go, how Go specifically enables folks with that mindset to be as successful as possible. So the main thesis of this talk is that Go enables dreamers and visionaries to be builders, right? So we start with these abstract concepts of dreamers, visionaries, people who are thinking up new novel ideas, thinking up new trends in the technology world or anything like that. And we put that into action. People who can actually take those ideas and create something tangible that everybody can use and something that may have never existed before. And I think Go specifically is a very unique language in that it allows all of these concepts by having a few different tenets within the language that have been held fast since the beginning of the language. And I'll go through those through the duration of this talk. So I mentioned that Go kind of enables all of this. Go enables dreamers, visionaries, all of this stuff to become builders. So how exactly does Go enable this, in my opinion? I think one of the first ways that Go enables this is stability. So you can always rely on the stability of the language itself, right? Go has, makes a lot of effort not to break your programs. The language keeps moving along, keeps improving, but it doesn't stop you from doing what you're doing by having you update your programs a bunch of times every time you update to a new compiler version or anything like that. As Go keeps it moving, it allows you to update, keep up with the latest and greatest, but not interrupt your workflow and not have to step back and stop what you're doing. It allows you to stay kind of singularly focused on the idea that you have in mind so that all you have to think about is executing and creating that idea. The other way that I think Go enables all of this is simplicity. And to me, personally, this is one of the biggest tenets of Go and one of my favorite things about the language in general. Go always aims to be simple, but making things simple can be extremely complex. And I think Go is a language that's very unique in that they got it really right. One of my personal favorite things about Go is its ability to reduce your cognitive overhead. So when you're writing a program in Go, when you're executing these ideas that you've dreamt up, that you've whatever, the language itself stays out of your way so that your only focus as you're sitting at your computer or whatever, writing your idea, making it come to life, all you have to worry about is the idea. You're not fighting with the compiler all of the time, or if you've ever used Rust, you're not fighting with the borrow checker, or you're not in some sort of dependency management mess or anything like that. The language itself really tries to stay out of your way and allow you to just kind of do what you need to do in a very simple way and very straightforward way. Another thing that I think a tenet of Go that helps enable this thought or this idea is its support for rapid development. I think the ability to quickly iterate on your idea, quickly iterate on your project and things like that, and get a really quick, strong feedback loop is extremely, extremely important for not losing momentum and not losing the drive to kind of build what you're doing and things like that. If anybody comes from like a C or C++ world, 3-hour-long compilation times and things like that is just soul crushing. So the ability for Go to support rapid development, I think is another extremely important and valuable tenet of the language itself. Next, I want to call out that I think Go is kind of like a batteries included language. By that I mean, when you download the Go distribution and you start programming, you essentially have everything that you need to be successful right away. I mean, there's plenty of third-party libraries and things like that you can download and add on. There's a million different structured logging libraries and a million different ways to do this, and that. But from the very beginning, all you have to do is download the Go distribution, and within a matter of minutes, you have a functioning HTTP server that can terminate TLS connections and all of these different kinds of things. It does not take a lot of time to be productive with the language, which again is something that I think is a huge testament to Go, the team that implements it, and one of its abilities to kind of enable people to build so many amazing things so quickly. Next, Go has world-class tooling. So again, once you just download the Go distribution itself, install it on your system, you have the compiler, you have the linker, you have a test framework, you have profiling tools, you have essentially everything you need to do, or everything you need to be successful as a developer. Next, Go as a language runs everywhere. And I'll kind of get into this a little bit more, but virtually any device you can run Go on, all the way down to like Raspberry Pis with TinyGo. So you're not limited by the environment that you want to deploy into when you're using this particular language. The next thing that I want to call out is Go's efficient execution. So there's a lot of languages that aim to be kind of simple or easy to use. Python or like scripting languages and things like that claim to be very developer friendly. But one of the things that Go kind of sets apart from a lot of these other languages is the fact that when it compiles down to the binary, it produces efficient, fast code that you can put into production immediately and you're ready to go. And one of the beautiful things about this particular tenet, and when it comes to Go, is you don't really have to do anything extra to enable this. By default, optimizations are enabled when you run Go build. Again, if you're familiar with LLVM or GCC or something like that, it's very easy to get lost in all of the different compiler flags and all of the different nonsense that you can add, and you end up putting together these make files that just kind of balloon out of control. For Go, the simplicity goes pretty much into every avenue of the language, from the tooling, the language itself, kind of all the way up and down the stack. And finally, I think that one of the parts that kind of enables all this is the vibrant community around Go. So you see here, everybody in this room, we have a packed room. There's conferences and Gophers all over the world. So there's a huge community of people who are building, creating, and sharing code constantly. Go in general is just so big in the open source space. There's so many people building things, sharing it with each other, contributing to projects and things like that, all of this shared work ends up benefiting the community. It's just kind of like a cyclical thing where all of the amazing things that people do just kind of ends up being reinvested into the community in general. And so you can build off of other people's work very, very easily. So I kind of want to run through all of these different tenets one by one, kind of call out some of the real benefits of each one, and then I'll go into one specific tenet that I kind of want to stop and focus on for a little bit. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the stability of the language itself. So one of the amazing things about Go is the backwards compatibility guarantee. So when you download, as I kind of mentioned earlier, when you download and install like the newest version of Go, say 120, which just came out not too long ago, right? You can go ahead, download that version, compile your programs, and feel confident that nothing's going to break. Now, sometimes that's not always the case. There are a few cases where things get broken, but the Go developers tend to kind of give you a way to opt out of it. So there generally are workarounds, but for the most part, your program will not break. At the very least, it will continue to compile, which is a huge thing. Another thing is a very thorough release process. So Go has a very predictable release cadence, right? So every 6 months, we get a new minor version and a bunch of patch versions in between that. Throughout that, we get RCs that we get to test, betas before that, and we have the confidence of knowing that the Go team internally runs all of these new versions of the compiler and everything internally within Google and other companies as well. So you know that by the time the compiler, the runtime, the standard library, all of that stuff actually ships to you, gets to your laptop, and gets to your production environment, it's been completely thoroughly ran, tested, and vetted. And again, I kind of mentioned this already, but the reliable release cadence, you know what to expect. You know when new versions of the language are going to come out. And since it all happens in the open, you have ample time to look forward to new features. And another thing is the language itself and the developers tend to consistently improve the execution speed and binary sizes. So typically with each release, you can look forward to faster execution times and smaller binaries. Again, not always the case, but the fact that this is something that is striven for in the language, I think is a huge testament to the language itself and the team that maintains it. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is simplicity. This one I think is the most important to me. And I'll come back to this a little bit later in the talk, but one of my personal favorite things about Go as a language is when I'm writing it, the language itself has minimal cognitive overhead. Now, for me, that is so extremely important because if you think about when you sit down to kind of write a new program or put an idea that you have in your head onto paper or more accurately into your text editor, you don't want to have to spend time thinking about the language itself, especially if you're a relatively new developer. You don't want to have to think about syntax and like memory management and all of these other kind of concepts that just kind of slow you down. They're not integral to the specific thing that you're trying to build. So for me, one of the most important things about Go and one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about the language is this concept here of providing the smallest amount of cognitive overhead so that you can just keep in your mind only the things that you need to focus on, the problem that you're actually trying to solve. And with that, one of the ways that Go enables that is by being a relatively small language. And I mean that in kind of like a syntactic way. You don't have to think a lot about how to write your Go programs. Like you can spend, even a new developer could spend a week or so just kind of learning the basics of the syntax and start writing full programs without having to worry about like all kinds of strange operators and things like that. Like if you come from another language like Haskell, there's all kinds of different things that you have to learn about, completely different concepts. Even Rust has a lot of different strange syntax and things like that, where with macros and all of this kind of stuff, where if you're not super familiar with the language, or even if you've been programming in a language like that for quite some time, it's very easy to look at somebody else's code base and kind of think, what is happening? And have to go back and look at the language and the documentation. That time away kind of breaks your concentration and takes you away from the task that you're trying to do. It kind of erases your productivity. And with that, another beautiful thing about Go is that typically there's one kind of clear way to implement a pattern. So one of the kind of hallmarks or one of the main things to call out is, for example, like looping in Go, right? You have your for loop. Congratulations, you can loop and go. That's really all you need. It it's nice to have other languages that have like iterators and methods that can do mapping and reducing and all of this really cool stuff. It feels really good to write that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you're just looping. So why make it more complex than it really needs to be? I used to do a lot of Ruby and things like that back in the day. And that's another language that I love. But there's a lot of times where you'll sit there and you'll write a program in a language like that. And you'll think about like, is the method that I'm using showing the intent that I really want? Like, should I be using a map here? Should I be using a reduce? Should I be using this, and that? Again, it adds a lot of extra overhead while you're writing your program that kind of takes you away from what you're actually trying to achieve. Another beautiful thing about Go, and another reason why it tends to be very simple, is this concept of automatic memory management. Now, that's something that's not very foreign to a lot of us, but still something really cool that I wanted to call out. You don't have to worry about allocations. You don't have to worry about any of those things. It's a garbage collected language, and it's a fully compiled garbage collected language. There's plenty of garbage collected languages, Java and things like that. But Go is a fully compiled, quick executing garbage collected language, and you don't have to do things like fight with a borrow checker as you would in Rust or anything like that. It makes it very simple, makes it very easy to just, again, focus on what you want to do. And lastly, something that I'm sure we all love about Go, one of the things that initially brought me to the language is the intuitive concurrency and parallelism. I would challenge somebody to find a language or anything that kind of gets it as right as Go does. And again, this is an opinion of mine, but I think it's a shared opinion, seeing as to how we're all here in this room at GopherCon, right? The simplicity of being able to do really complex tasks is, again, another hallmark of the language, and something that enables you to build modern, complex applications without having to put too much thought into like the nitty-gritty details of implementing this kind of thing. The next tenet that I want to talk about is rapid development. One of my favorite things about Go, as I kind of touched on a little bit, is the quick compilation and link times. So again, if you've ever come from a world of LLVM or GCC, trying to compile large projects like that, if you've ever tried to compile like the Firefox web browser or something like that, see you in a couple days. Like, it takes so long, it takes so much time and effort to be able to compile large projects like that. Whereas you take a similarly large project like Kubernetes or whatever, and it may take a little bit of time to compile the entire thing on your laptop, but it's certainly not going to take hours or days. So the quick compilation times is something that I think is another huge hallmark of the language, and something else that helps Go developers be so successful. Another one is sensible defaults. Touched on this a little bit earlier, but when you type Go build, that's pretty much it. The resulting binary, you can take that and put that into production. You don't have to worry about different flags and optimization levels and things like that. You build, put it in a container, or do whatever you're going to do with it, ship it into production, and that's really the end of the story. And I think that's something that, like, after a while you come to take for granted, just how kind of easy and simple that workflow is. And finally, one of the really cool things about Go is kind of the built-in test framework. Now, there's other languages that implement this as well. Rust also has that and things like that. But I think there's something to be said for being able to test and develop your code without having to install or think about what test framework you're going to use or anything like that. Obviously, there's other options you can kind of go for, but the ability to just kind of download Go and get started, I think, is just a huge advantage for the language. The next hallmark of the language, I think, is this concept of it being a batteries included language. The standard library itself is so comprehensive. Just within the standard library, you have HTTP servers, cryptography implementations. You can even there's even packages for parsing the Go AST and being able to parse the language itself. There's data structures. There's all kinds of things that you have at your fingertips without having to search for third-party code, try to vet it, and things like that. Additionally, it also comes with a module and versioning system. So this is something that's been fraught with like a little bit of discussion over the years between vendoring and introducing modules and versioning and all of this kind of stuff. But I tend to think that it ended up kind of really simple and in a really kind of clean place compared to a lot of other languages. Go is a language that I do not ever find myself in so-called dependency hell, where like I'm trying to update a version of something and now my program won't compile, or when I run it, I get all kinds of crazy errors and things like that. So another huge benefit for the language. Again, mentioned this before, but the test framework. It's already there as soon as you download it. You don't have to do anything else. And I'll kind of touch on it a little bit more, but the test framework kind of goes beyond just like testing your code. There's also benchmarking, fuzzing, things like that. So it's really, really comprehensive as a language. The next big thing is world-class tooling. So the compiler itself, the compiler and linker are very modern. So you have like the compiler has like an SSA backend for being able to really optimize your code. It's very, very quick in terms of execution of compiling your code, linking it, and all of that kind of stuff. So that's a huge, huge plus for the language. The test benchmark runner is something really cool that I've called this out a few times, but I think it's so important, especially the benchmarking, to be able to, by default, take a look at the execution times of your code, be able to optimize it, all of that, I think is a huge, huge benefit for the language. Next, built-in kind of profiling tools. You get profiling out of the box with Go. All you have to do is maybe add something to your code or run your test with an extra flag, and you can see exactly where it's spending its time, exactly where it's allocating memory, all of this kind of stuff, without having to do very much extra work. This is a huge benefit for Go developers and something huge in terms of being able to maintain your productivity even after you get past the initial build phase, right? To be able to make it faster, make it better, things like that. Fuzzing tools, something that's actually come out within recent versions of Go, not just be able to test your code, but to be able to fuzz your implementations and really dig out complex or obscure bugs in your code. The race detector. I'm sure everybody has been familiar with that, and I'm sure that saved people more than a time or two. But the fact that just ships with the language, such kind of like a complex tool, just ships with the language, I think is just a huge testament, again, to the language itself. Static analysis tools, right? Any editor you use is going to take advantage of a lot of the built-in or standard static analysis tools that come with Go. And one that we're all probably intimately familiar with and very thankful for, Go format, right? Automatic formatting. Something that I think is really, really underappreciated in a lot of other languages, but something that I've found to be such a great thing. And selfishly, if I might mention, it has a pretty good debugger. Not built into the language, but worth a notable mention anyways. Another huge benefit of the language is what I kind of touched on earlier. Go pretty much runs everywhere. And when I say everywhere, it kind of really does run everywhere. Workstations, servers, think about a CPU architecture, Go's probably going to run on it. PowerPC, S390X, Arch, AMD 64, the list kind of goes on and on and on. The operating system support is world-class as well. But aside from just, servers and workstations and things like that, Go can also run on your mobile devices. So you can develop apps with Go, not just server backends, not just CLI library or CLI programs or libraries and things like that. You can get rid of Objective-C, you can get rid of Swift, you can get rid of React Native or any of these other kind of things and stay just within Go. Additionally, embedded devices. So if you've never heard of TinyGo, it's a really, really cool kind of distribution of Go that allows Go programs to run on extremely resource constrained devices, Raspberry Pis, things like that. If you look into any of the talks by the creator of TinyGo, I would highly recommend it. He just gave a talk at FOSDEM where I was just at, where he's using Go to control all of these different microcontrollers and implement have different embedded devices speak over Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and all of that stuff, and it's all just controlled from within Go. So you don't have to dip into C or get into Rust or leave the language that you love to be able to do these kinds of things. And finally, you can run Go in the web browser via WASM, right? Another really huge thing. And WASM in general isn't just limited to kind of running in the browser. I've heard of people compiling Go to a WASM or WASI target and using that as a plugin system and things like that. So the various execution models of Go are extremely, extremely powerful and enable you to build things in new and kind of novel and interesting ways. The next is efficient execution. So as I've touched on, Go binaries are optimized by default. You don't have to do anything. You have a production-ready binary as soon as you type go build. They're always making constant improvements to the garbage collector, internal memory management, things like that. I'll touch on this a little bit later, but when it comes to memory management in general, if you think about what just came out with Go 120 with memory arenas and things like that, they're always improving and creating new concepts of ways to optimize your program, typically without you having to do anything yourself. Efficient parallelism. I mean, the fact that you can just type Go and then supply a function without having to do much more than that to get concurrent and parallel programs is absolutely huge. And for Go to treat that as such a first-class citizen in the language, I think is so important. We live in a world of multi-process CPUs. Unless you're on an embedded system, or even if you are on an embedded system, most times you're dealing with at least 2 cores. So the fact that Go makes this such a first and foremost part of the language is just absolutely paramount to the success of the language and the types of applications that you're able to build while you're writing in Go. Finally, we have the vibrant community. So we have Gophers around the world. We have amazing conferences such as this one where we can all come together, share ideas, show what we're building, talk to each other in the hallway, collaborate, things like that. An incredible open source community of people sharing code, contributing to other people's code, and improving things as well. And the helpful Gopher Slack channel. So if that's something that you're not already on, you should definitely check it out. If you're ever stuck with anything, or if you ever have a question, there's no shortage of people who are willing to help you out. So with all that said, the one thing that I really, really want to focus on is this idea of simplicity. Because, as I said, to me, the very, very most important thing about Go is the idea that when you're writing your program, there's not a lot that you have to think about. It really allows you to just focus on the problem that you're trying to solve. Now, sometimes simplicity can also have a negative connotation. People who come from other languages might kind of complain about the lack of certain features and the certain ways of doing things and all of this. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, a lot of those extra features, a lot of those extra kind of concepts and things like that just end up slowing you down in the long run. Simplicity is such a huge, huge thing, and it's so difficult to get right. So I think in general, simplicity is powerful, right? Some examples of this is like consistent formatting of the language in the source code itself. It sounds basic, but it removes a lot of needless like bike shedding and arguments and things like that. Powerful concurrency, the ability to just type one single keyword and unlock concurrent and parallelism in your code is something that cannot be understated at all. You don't have to worry about manual thread creation. You don't have to worry about anything like that. It all just kind of happens for you. And again, I think it's something that like, as you continue to work in the language, it's easy to take for granted. The language does a lot for you as well. I mean, escape analysis, memory management. You don't have to think about where you're storing your variables. Are they on the stack? Are they on the heap? Do I need to free this? Do I need to do that? It's all kind of handled for you in a very clear and easy to understand way. But if you do want to dig into some of those details, Go also provides really easy ways for you to kind of inspect what the compiler is doing. So there are flags to kind of have the compiler tell you, where is this variable going? And not only where is it going, but why is it ending up there? Why is it escaping to the heap? Why is it doing this? Why is it doing that? And that goes into even like other optimizations, such as inlining of functions and things like that. You can really get the compiler to tell you a lot. So this idea of simplicity kind of doesn't mean that the language is not powerful. It just means that it stays out of your way. And when you really need access to some of the low-level details and features and things like that, you always have them available to you. There's other like really, really cool concepts when it comes to simplicity. The ability to defer functions so you have easy cleanup. Automatic compiler optimizations, as I've already mentioned. Automatic debug info generation, which is really, really good. And then again, built-in tools, profiler, test runner, fuzzer, all of these different kind of things. So a testament to that is this statement right here. The ability to just write go and do something and have that start executing in parallel is, again, so incredibly powerful, but something that's so easy to take for granted. Now, I would also argue that simplicity is elegant. So Go has a lot of really cool and elegant features to organize your code and express your ideas through interfaces and now generics, channels for being able to communicate between Go routines and do that in a very declarative and easy to understand way. It allows you to produce not only very efficient, very correct code, but also, I think, very beautiful code that's really nice to look at and extremely easy to understand. It's really easy to create something like this, a channel that you can use to communicate between different programs or different Go routines. And if you think about like what you would have to do if you were dealing just with raw threads and creating pipes and having to manage all of this kind of stuff, it really kind of drives home how huge of a benefit this is. And again, I think simplicity is freeing. And I use this this picture in general of this little gopher riding on a motorcycle. Before I had kids, I used to ride motorcycles. Much too dangerous now. But when I remember one of the beautiful things about like doing that particular hobby was when you're doing that, you have to focus just on what's ahead of you, right? It's kind of inherently a dangerous thing. So all you're thinking about is the road ahead of you. You're not really thinking about like any of your other problems or anything else that happened that day or last week or anything like that. And bringing that back to Go, when you're writing Go programs, you don't have the overhead of thinking about a million different things. You really just are looking straight down the road at what you need to do and what you need to accomplish. And in that, you have like, and to kind of piggyback on simplicity is freeing, we have some of the memory management stuff that just came out in Go 120. So I want to call this out too because Go allows you to do kind of now in 120 your own kind of manual memory management, but it does it again in a very simple, intuitive, and easy to understand way. And if you don't need it, you don't have to use it. It's not something that's actually required. So it's kind of like a zero cost abstraction in a weird way to steal from Rust. Now, another thing about about Go that I think is really good and really powerful from the language is that whether you're a novice or an expert, the language grows with you. It's not a language that you're going to outgrow as you become a more experienced developer and you try to do bigger and bigger things. The language is there with you the entire time. So it's friendly to new programmers with a lightweight syntax, conceptually simple as a language, batteries included so that you don't have to run around and try to find a bunch of third-party libraries to be productive. But for experienced programmers, you can express complex concurrent operations very, very simply. You can leverage the unsafe package if you need to do some kind of crazy or low-level stuff. You can get powerful insight into what the compiler is actually doing underneath the hood as it builds your code. And you can design elegant systems using interfaces and composability. And you can use a lot of the built-in tools such as profiling and things like that to improve your program once you've already written it. Now, I want to kind of spend some time and give some words of advice both to new programmers and to more experienced programmers. So for novices, for people who are new to programming or maybe new to Go in general, there's a few things that I kind of want to stress and have you kind of walk away with. If you're new to programming or if you're new in Go, one of the things that you should be doing is always building things. And especially when you're first starting out, you might end up metaphorically nailing a board to your head. And it could hurt, it could be painful and very uncomfortable, but continue building, continue creating, continue trying and learning. That's the best way to kind of get better as a developer. Second, always learn things. And this kind of goes outside of the Go language itself. So once you've become productive with Go, learn like additional concepts, learn different algorithms, learn different data structures, learn different concepts, read white papers, read books, things like that, because you don't actually have to spend that much time mastering the language itself. So go out and master other concepts and bring that back to the things that you're trying to build. And finally, don't be afraid to break things. If you're relatively new, jump into a big project and just start messing around with it. It might fail to compile. It might start failing some of the tests and things like that. But that feedback is stuff that you can use to improve yourself, improve your skill set, and improve your knowledge, not only of programming in general, but of Go as a language. So don't be afraid to get in there. Don't be afraid to break something. I break things all of the time. Now, for experts, people who have already made it to the metaphorical moon, there's a lot of things that you can do, not only with Go, but with the community in general to kind of give back. So for the more experienced folks in the room, I would say teach things. So come up on stage, give talks, talk about what you're building, talk about what you've learned, talk about what works, talk about what doesn't work. Share your knowledge, and all it's going to do is make the community greater and really kind of build up new developers and things like that. And you learn a lot from teaching as well. Secondly, review things. If you are an experienced developer and you maintain like an open source project or something internal at work or something like that, be a patient reviewer, be a thorough reviewer, and again, pass along your expertise to newer developers. And finally, continue building things. Always continue dreaming and thinking of what can come next and pushing the boundaries of what's already out there. Use your knowledge to create something new or contribute meaningfully to an existing project. So in the words of John Lennon, you may think I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I think everybody in this room, we're here because we're all dreamers. We're all visionaries in a way. We're here because we want to improve ourselves. We're here because we want to show what we've done. And we're here because we're all part of this amazing community together. So what do we all have in common? Obviously, Go. And no matter where you come from, that thread kind of ties us all together. So with that being said, I spoke to the novices, I spoke to the experts, but now I want to speak to everybody in this room. go dream, create new ideas, go create, and finally, the most important thing that I want everybody to do is go enjoy the conference. Thank you very much.